Hi, everybody. Welcome back to season 4 of the Epic Podcast. Edric, Poon and Company, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. As you can see over here, we're in MojoIdeas, an awesome studio that we've managed to rent out, and these guys are helping me to up the production value for you. Now, as we explore season 4, we're themed How to Be. We're going to be exploring job roles and positions that you've probably heard about, but you don't really know what they are. For example, how to be a voice coach or how to be a generational business owner. Now, we're going to be exploring this as we go on down the season. So thank you so much for listening or watching, and continue to support the podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Epic Podcast. And this week, our theme is really about how to be a community manager. And I've got none other than a wonderful community manager that I've met through the Launchpad, and that will be Megha Singh. Hi, Megha.
Hi, Edric. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity.
No, it's fantastic to have you on. Now, the reason why, of course, I asked you to come on, because when I first met you over at Launchpad, number one, community manager is something that I've heard of, but I've never really understood what it was. But somehow or other, meeting you brought out an amazing, or at least it gave me an amazing impression of what a proper community manager should be. Last we spoke, community managers can sometimes be misunderstood or misrepresented under the guise of social media managers, partly marketing managers, partly PR, or in fact, it could have been like an old person at the community center, right? Dishing out tickets. That could have been a community manager.
Yeah.
But I think none other than yourself, I need the experts to come in to talk about that. And if, let's say, for example, you had to tell the CEO what a community manager was, how would you say?
So, that's a very interesting start and an interesting question because, I'll park that CEO bit for a while because, as I was sharing with you before we got started, community has become a bit of a buzzword now. And because people are able to monetize communities, I think it's going a bit off track in terms of everybody trying to build communities, but the intention is not right. But to go to your question of what a community manager is, I would say it's a person who helps to foster and nurture a community and the people inside it and make sure they get value, make sure they are seen. Now, depending on the size of the community, like if it's a very big community, this could be multiple roles. There could be community coordinators. There could be community organizers. There is a community manager as well. So it can become a few different roles if it's a very big community. But essentially, a community manager is someone who makes sure that everybody who is in that community is getting value, is thriving, and helping to make connections, foster connections. So there is a lot a community manager does. But to be honest, what I do in Launchpad and my work with other communities, I see myself more as a community builder rather than a manager. And I feel the community builder phrase captures what I'm doing, which is not just managing, but also like making sure we have the right people join the community so that it grows better. So I am going to petition to people who are calling me community managers to change my title.
To a community builder. But I love that because, again, you're looking at a commonality in some ways and building people around that so-called mission or that intention, or in fact, it could just be a common interest, right? One of the things that really struck me was that you knew everybody's name. So how, and everybody's company and everybody's role and exactly what they do. Now we're talking like 200 people. So I'm just like, look, I can't even remember everybody in my extended family's name, let alone the community. How do you do that?
So to clarify, Launchpad is now, because we were talking about Launchpad, the Launchpad's community is now 400 members. So we have doubled since we first met. Just going back, and I feel like we should explain what Launchpad is. Not everybody would know. And so Launchpad is basically a network of entrepreneurs that's backed by the Honeycombers Group. And it's just about a year old. We started first in Hong Kong last year. In Singapore, we've been around since March. So, this month will officially be like a year old in Singapore. And basically, our idea is to build a network of entrepreneurs, a global network. We are currently have members in Singapore, Hong Kong, Bali, Australia, Kuala Lumpur, and we are exploring other areas as well. Where of course, you'll have the networking opportunities, you have the business leads, but at the same time, there is mentoring, there's learning, there's peer support. And then I think that comes more also as a natural strength of mine, So that's something I've recognized, that I love connecting with people. I love, meeting them, understanding their work, and then connecting them to other people who can support them. So I feel like that's something that I have been doing naturally over the years. And it fits very well with my role of the community manager, because then I can help that member who comes in. So essentially, like any community, anybody joins, right? They want to see if they're getting value from it, right? Whether it's paid or not paid, say suppose you're in a community of interests, like, my husband loves motorcycles. So he has a community, which is just his buddies who ride motorcycles. So that's a community. I mean, it's not a paid community, but he is part of it because he's getting some value out of it. He's getting that friendship, that bonding over a common topic. So it's essentially about making sure. So my role is not only making them feel welcome, making them feel at home, making them feel that, yes, we know you, we care for you. I mean, that is like a basic thing for any community. And now I am going to make sure you get value from this.
Well, the way you put it, right, it's almost like it's kind of like a country club membership almost, whereby, we have a common thing. We have this country club, but we're going to leverage on it for networking. We're going to leverage on it for learning and the facilities, if you wanted to put it that way. Now, if it were up to you, do you think that every business in general should have their own dedicated community builder?
So it really depends on the nature of the business. And this is where, just going back to one of the points I was mentioning in the beginning, where it's become a buzzword and people want to build communities because they think they'll get something out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just feel that when you're trying to build a community, your intentions should be clear. So just going back to that CEO, right? Is he trying to build a community of his employees? So who are his stakeholders where he's trying to build a community? So that's where you have the HR has usually been doing that role, so far. But now, there are some internal community managers to make sure that the employees feel valued and they feel that they're having a great time in the community. Or are you trying to build a community with your customers? So I feel someone who does it really well in Singapore is Rachel Lim, who's the founder of Bonito, big fashion brand. And, she's someone who always is like, she's very active on social media. She's talking to her customers, not just as like customers, but part of the LB community, as she calls it. And over time, they do events where they invite customers. She's also been doing a lot of talks and workshops, which are on different topics, like, say, journaling or manifestation or parenting, because she's now a parent too. So where she's like adding value indirectly, like she's not like selling her products there. She's just bringing value to her customers who know her, and then they've become part of this larger community. So, and I'm sure, it would be helping with her sales too, but like that's not what she's hawking. She's bringing some other value to it. So I feel like that's a good way if a CEO is thinking of building communities with their customers. Like that's a great way to do it, where you give value beyond what they would expect. So she's bringing these really internationally recognized speakers who are doing talks with her, doing exclusives with her. So people are like, wow, they're like, oh, this speaker has never spoken to anyone in Singapore before. And she's bringing this person into the community. So people have that wow value.
Right. I think where, the conversation actually falls short between the community builder and perhaps the CEO is that every business needs money to run, right? And perhaps the C is always looking for where is the value.
Right.
And then when they say value, it becomes a monetary value, right? Something that has to be top line driven. How did you get around to actually communicating that, look, this is going to contribute to your top line? At the same time, you also have to understand that it has to connect on an emotional level for people to buy in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there are two ways. So I'm part of two community groups in a way. So one is Launchpad that you know me through.
Right.
And that's a very membership-based model. So you pay, it's a paid membership, you become a member, and we have like certain offerings. So that's one model. And then I am part of another organization called Treehouse, which is a great company. It's a co-working space with on-site childcare and a creche. And their members, of course, they have like hot desking and fixed office. So, people are buying actually those facilities. They're paying for the school or they're paying for the creche. So the community in a way is kind of secondary. But the reason I bring that up is the community there is very important for retention. Because it's like when you're thinking of monetary value, as you said, for the C-suite folks, right? You don't want to get a customer and keep losing a customer. It's like I get and I lose. Then you're not really building your customer base if you lose them as fast as you're getting them. So what is your USP to retain a customer, and that's where if you're building a community, it's very helpful because then people will be like, okay, this space is like the price is slightly cheaper, but I have formed great friendships here and I have a great support system here. So I'll still continue with this space because I'm getting a lot of value versus another space which is like, okay, it is cheaper, but I don't have that support system there. I don't have that community there. So then community can be that differentiating factor that helps you to retain customers.
Okay. So the community is your business and the business through the community building actually creates a longevity for the business in itself. And that in itself, it's not the traditional model, isn't it?
Yes. It's not the traditional model, and which is why, because I do a lot of reading on this subject, there was somewhere I was reading that apparently community manager role will be one of the most sought after roles moving forward, because as you were saying, companies want to build communities and I think this is the reason for it, because imagine it's a customer who will stay engaged with you and will keep buying from you, so you'll have repeat purchases, because there is that community feeling that you've fostered, versus say you go to a site, and I'm just taking an example of say an e-commerce platform, and you're like, okay, it's fine, I'm doing like the comparison, whichever is cheaper, I'll just go there. So it's like that's where your community can be really helpful.
I see. If you were to look back or give us a timeline, right, of let's say at the beginning of community building, what was it like and how has it evolved to what it is today? Because I'm starting to see that it's a mishmash of skills, that you have to have a mix of PR, marketing, almost event hosting, event management, project management. It's evolved to that. But how did it all start out as a community builder per se? I mean, what's your impression of that though?
So I feel that depending on the size of the organization, people often clump all these roles together. But if it's a big enough organization, there would be separate roles. So a community manager need not necessarily have to have event management skills. They can work with the event manager as well. But I do feel that the community manager has to be coordinating with various organizations. So for example, in some communities, the community manager is also doing socials. So I have a friend who is a community manager, is her title, but she also does the socials for the community. But for example, in my case, I'm not doing the social media, but I work closely to ensure that the content that goes out is relevant for the community. So it's like, if you've been seeing the Launchpad social posts, like yesterday we had a reel about how to use the website, the accounts tab, for example. And that is a pain point that I have noticed as a community manager and communicated with the social team. And so they have come up with social content which is helpful for the community. So I think you don't need to be doing everything depending on the size of the organization. But yes, you do need to be working very closely with the founder and the CEO, work very closely with the event manager, with the social media person, with the marketing person, because you're the one who knows the community very well, So I am the one who knows that actually members are giving this feedback. So we need to evolve, or we need to change this, or we need to tweak this. So like as the person who's on the ground, the community manager is hearing everything. So as I said, you don't need to know everything, but for just as I was sharing initially, my background, since I have my own company, my own business consultancy, I have event management as part of my skill set. So that's something I'm able to do and provide to the companies I work with.
Right. So that has actually helped you along the way,
Yes.
right? I love what you're talking about the community, as in it is not a product. It is very much a living, breathing organism that has needs, has a voice, and needs to be taken care of. One thing that
one more thing I wanted to add there is that it's important to not think that you own the community, in the sense that, Launchpad owns its community, or like any other organization owns. You are co-creating it. So it's like there are members who have their own ideas, they have their own thinking, they have their needs. So the community that we are building you're building it along with the members who are inside it. So that is something it's important to remember as well. Of course, you need to have that theme that you're building around it. So we say, you must have seen our hashtag for Launchpad is kind community. So we're trying to build a kind community of entrepreneurs who are supporting each other. So that theme is there, but at the same time, we know that that's why we are so receptive to feedback from members when they say that this is not working out. Okay, let's try this. So because we are building this together.
Yeah, and that's a complete mindset shift from, let's say, building any campaign on socials or leading up to an event, whereby you own it, you steer it the way you want it to, and no matter what anybody says, it's going to go my direction in that sense. Whereas with the community, it could go in any direction and at any time, because depending on what the trend is of what the community is asking for, you're there to either serve or to support. And I see this as such a huge mindset shift, because this isn't, again, it's not traditional. It's not something a corporate person, I would say, would be able to adjust to very easily, because we're so used to something that's so fixed, right? And I find that absolutely fascinating, right, about community managing or community building. I think we're going to just take a short break, and we'll be right back to find out a little bit more from Megha about how this journey started, what she's experienced, the pitfalls, and of course, just find out her story of what she's been doing in these few years. We'll be right back. And we are back, of course, here at the Epic Podcast together with Megha Singh.
Hi.
Okay, so earlier on we were just talking about the differences between community manager, community builder, but more importantly, how different a scope and a mindset you need to have to be able to succeed at the role. And it's a mishmash of things, it's a myriad of things, but at the end of the day, it's an amazing opportunity to bring people together for a common cause and to support them and grow together. So it sounds simple, but it's not. Right? And now having this mindset has to come from somewhere. I'd love to be able to hear from you as well, of course, how you began on this journey. Nobody becomes a community builder from day one of their corporate life, I mean, where did you find this passion or love for people from the start? Was it when you were a child, or did some meteorite from space come and, fly into your room and turn you into this wonderful being?
No, and my personality is such that I'm outgoing, I'm friendly with everyone, but like I don't have a lot of close friends. So just in terms of like personality, it's not like my personality has transitioned into this role. And you're right. I mean, I didn't start out thinking that I will be a community builder. It kind of just happened in a way. Like the first community that I was part of, so I set up my business in 2015, and the first network I joined was something known as CRIB, which is still around. It stands for Creating Responsible and Innovative Businesses, and it is the OG network for female entrepreneurs in Singapore. So, I started my company, joined that community, and that's where, even though I was not like technically the community manager there, but it was there where I like found this love or this passion of like speaking to members and understanding their needs, and then supporting them, making sure they get value, making sure they make valuable connections. So a community, like especially if you're an entrepreneur community, right? The most valuable offerings are basically what you can get from other members. So, it's like, oh, did I get, like, I connected to someone and they solved a problem that I was having, or I got a business lead, or I got a contact for, like, which would help me to create my product. So, I mean, that's how I kind of, fell into it in a way. And then since then, I've been on that journey through different organizations that I've been a part of. And then, of course, I think officially I became a community manager only for Launchpads. Yeah.
Okay. And earlier on off air, you were saying that you came to Singapore in 2011.
Yes.
But prior to that, where were you? And do you remember what your first job was?
Yes. So I was born in India and I grew up there too. And then what I was doing, so I have a bachelor's in information technology. And my first job was after that, where I kind of, in between my bachelor's and master's, I had a 5-month stint with a tech startup in Hyderabad, which is, a city in South India. And it was like the gap between my bachelor's and master's degree. I was doing the job. So I remember it. And I was supposed to do, I can't remember what was the original role that I was hired for. But then later on, like they kind of saw my skill sets in terms of communication. So that has always been my strong point, communication and writing. So I started doing like corporate communication work for them. So managing the internal communications of the company. But yeah, that was a short job and didn't, and after that I did a master's in mass communication. I was working in Mumbai before coming here in 2011. I remember the first job I had here too, and you won't believe it, I was a retail assistant. So I started out with that. I was like...
A master's degree.
Yes.
And then you went into a retail assistant.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think that's the right word. It's basically, say, when you go to Takashimaya, which is where I was, and when you go to that floor where you have...
The atrium.
Yeah, not the atrium. Like, say you go to the women's fashion floor, and they have different brands,
Yep.
and there are like people standing with each brand. So I was one of those people.
Outside the store.
Outside the store, helping people, like, try the clothes out and then, buy the clothes. So that was my first job here.
Right. And well, first of all, you have a master's in mass communications.
Yeah.
What led you to kind of pursue retail assistant at that point? It's a pretty big shift from what you would expect.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because like I didn't know that that's the job that I was going to do.
Oh my God, you got hoodwinked.
I was, in a way, I was told it's an internship. So I was sharing with you in the beginning that, when I came to Singapore, I wanted to explore something different from what I had been doing back in India. And I was really fascinated by the fashion industry. So in India, I was with a corporate communication firm, and we used to work with like finance companies and oil and gas and retail, which were like, I thought very dry. And at that time, I was like, oh, fashion, beauty, lifestyle sounds so fun. So it was a company that said that they would give me an internship. And of course, I was naive enough not to ask exactly the role was. And then I found out that's the role. But, I don't like to back out once I commit. So I did that. And it was an interesting experience, learning experience for me too.
How long did that last?
It was a very short stint. It was like, I think, 5 days. It was a short-term kind of a thing. I wasn't supposed to do it for the long term. Like they had a pop-up, the company that I was with had a pop-up, and I had to spend like a few days there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did you progress into starting up your own company? There has to be a reason that you went, no, I'm not going to be a retail assistant anymore for 5 days, but I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. No, and anyway, I was never planning to be a retail assistant.
Yeah.
As I said, I was kind of, in a way, okay, now this is the job. Oh, okay, this is the job. Okay, I'll just do it because I committed to it. But it was more like what I realized was, and as I said, I came on a dependent pass. The jobs that I was getting were also not very well paying and not very satisfying. So I felt that the way I will be able to do work that fulfills me, and also, I start to make good money because, and that's where before we started rolling, I was speaking about how financial independence for women is such an important cause for me. And it's through my own journey where it's like from earning very well in India for myself, I came here and I had like zero income, right? And I didn't have any networks. I didn't know anyone here. So I was really starting from scratch. As I said, the gigs I was getting, because of my strength in communication, I would get part-time gigs for social media, for content writing and things like that. But they were not paying well at all. So that's when the whole idea of entrepreneurship came to me, where fulfilling work, working for different clients, getting paid more. And when I started my company, my son was born. So I thought it would also be, he was about a year old when I started my company. And I was like, this will give me the flexibility to be with him when he needs me. But at the same time, I'm also working, I'm financially independent, and I'm using my mind because, just sitting at home, I was like, what do I do with my time? It's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the worst things to happen, right? When you have so much time, but yet you have so much energy and you don't know where to point it. So that ended up, you basically steered all of that information and energy into developing a consultancy, which you now run. And how long have you been in this?
So I set it up in 2015, so now 8 years.
8 years already, 8 right?
Years.
And
yes,
how much has changed in those 8 years, if you look back, since day one?
A lot, because the work that I was working with small businesses, and then just through word of mouth I started getting bigger clients. So some of my clients have been MNCs, which I won't name, but and the other clients I've mentioned, like Treehouse and Launchpad. But it has been like I said, through my work, and that's why I'm so passionate about my work. I'm very committed to it. I formed those friendships and those networks that I was lacking, from knowing nobody. Now I have a great network in Singapore and in the region, which has all come through the work that I have done and also through these communities that I've been part of, whether it's like Crib or Launchpad. There's another community I'm part of called Athena Network, again, a community for female entrepreneurs. So through these communities, I now have a great network. I have great friendships through that. And again, the clientele, as I have said, have changed. And then the work I have been doing has also changed. So when I started my consultancy, it was mostly communication. So I was doing social media for people, email marketing, content writing. But now my work has evolved to more project management and community management, which I do for Launchpad, and business development, relationship management. And that has and that's, I feel, the beauty of the work that I have done, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've been given, where people were like, I mean, I didn't have degrees in this, but they were like, hey, Megha, I think we like the work that you're doing. Why don't you just give this a shot, and see how you fare with it? So it was more like people had faith in me and gave me opportunities, and then I tried things and I was good at it, So
awesome, because, okay, look, it almost sounds like a fairy tale to me.
It does.
Because if it could sum it up in 4 words of how your work has been fulfilling, make friends, make money. I'm like it sounds like a dream, but of course it's not that easy.
No, and it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sometimes I have, because I have a lot of projects, I work long hours. I've had a lady came up to me and said once in a very sarcastic tone, like, do you even have a life? Like, you're doing Launchpad, you're doing this, you're doing that, and it was meant like a taunt.
A joke.
Yeah, no, it was meant as a
taunt.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's
a little catty.
Yeah, how do you basically where you're saying it's not a fairy tale, it's like I do work really long hours, and there are times when I'm working weekends as well. But it's like when you find your work fulfilling, right? When it really motivates you, these things don't matter.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, there's this whole narrative right now about work-life balance and work-life integration. I'm like, my balance is like this.
No, work-life balance is the biggest load of BS in the world, because your work and your life are still within the same time frame. It is the exact same timeline. You can't split those things and go, all right. I mean, traditionally you had 9 to 5, right? But that was also because this was pre-internet. Work doesn't follow you back home, right? If you needed to fax a paper, it got stuck in the fax machine after you left, there's nothing you could do about it. Nobody's going to go home. Tomorrow you just get an earful and you go, okay, I'll fax it again. But now, emails and everything, your work follows you home no matter what you do. But it's how we sporadically make those changes to adjust to our days around those things as well. I found it very interesting that people are still talking about work-life balance. Like, it's 2023.
Yeah. No, and I feel like it's another stick with which to beat women up with. You know that women have always had more challenges, where they were not...
First of all, I don't condone beating up women or with a stick.
I meant metaphorically.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. I don't want anybody to flame me for this kind of thing.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So
no.
anyway, beating women up with sticks. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's like, you've heard of the glass ceiling,
Yes.
Where, there is a certain level in the corporate hierarchy after which they can't go. And then now that women are kind of breaking that, it's like I feel like women are told more about work-life balance, that, hey, why are you working so hard? Go home and spend time with your children, or you're neglecting your children. But I don't hear men being told when they're working very hard and they have kids, like, hey, why are you not spending time with your kids, right? So I feel this is another thing to put women in their place by society, because society, I feel, is still trying to get adjusted to the fact that, women have come out of the households and are now started working and earning, and sometimes earning more than their male partners.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, just to reframe that as well, I mean, I love this conversation because on the one hand, it's interesting to hear that from the lady's perspective, because if somebody were to say that to you, hey, why don't you take the night off or take the evening off, go spend it with your kids, right? Because, you must miss them. At the same time, from the employer side, it could also come across as a form of compassion and sensitivity as well.
No, but the way you framed it is different. It's also about how that message is communicated.
Right.
So from the way you said it, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, I wouldn't mind that at all. But it's it's the narrative, or like the way, say, that lady said it to me, like, do you even have a life? It's like how you communication. That's why communication is so important,
Yes.
and how you frame what you're trying to say. But as I said, this is a narrative where it's like women are forced, now being like said, take the work-life balance. Don't push yourself so hard to achieve, because your kids are missing you, and maybe the kids are just fine. It's like you're expected to like overparent and be there all the time. So there are all these expectations, and I don't want to like overshadow the conversation from the whole community management thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, especially in our generation. So like I'm 41. I'm assuming
we're the same similar
age.
age,
Yeah. So in our generation, there is still this kind of conversation.
Yes.
Like we're still trying to find the balance between what is a woman's role, especially if she's a mother, how is she managing her work and motherhood both.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that for the younger generation, I feel both the boys and girls are a bit more sorted in terms of what they expect from each other. But I feel this is something that, at least in our generation, we're still trying to figure out. Yeah.
And in this conversation, I just love the idea of internal chatter as well. As a mother of two, do you still question yourself over these things sometimes?
No, I actually have no feeling of guilt when it comes to my boys.
I feel no guilt for my son whatsoever.
Yeah, no. And not just guilt. I mean, there is this, like, when you become a parent, that love is so special. It's so different from, like, say, the loves you may have experienced with your previous girlfriends, boyfriends, a love for your father or mother. When you become a parent, that love for your child is completely different. So I don't feel any guilt over there, because and again, I have maybe the flexibility as an entrepreneur, because when I need to be there for my children's things, I'm able to move my schedule so that I'm there to attend important things. And then, like, for example, there was this time, and I shared this example, where my son had a fall in school and my husband was on a work trip. I was able to cancel all my meetings and just rush to him and take him to the hospital and take care of him, which, and it also means that I work with clients who are so amazing. They were like, the moment I told them that, I can't do these meetings because, like, I need to take care of my child, they were like, yes, please go. So, it's also like, as an entrepreneur, I choose the people I work with, and I make sure they are a right fit for me, and not just in terms of money, but also in terms of, like, what values they have and how they are to work with. And so this is something I feel so grateful for, to be able to do that.
Right. And it really, I mean, from the conversations that we're having right now, you really strike me as someone who's really gotten their priorities straight. And I would think also very secure about your values and who you are. If not, I don't think you'd be able to survive as an entrepreneur.
I mean, I wouldn't, knowing myself better than you know me.
Of course.
Yes, I would say it's still a work in progress. My values are clear, but I think it's what I'm trying to figure out is my voice. So that's something, and what I stand for and what I want to speak about. So, this is probably the first time in a public stage where I'm talking about financial independence for women and not beating mothers up for working so hard. And again, metaphorically beating, no stick involved. So that is something that is, I'm still, is a work in progress. But yes, I guess my priorities are clear. That's very clear in my head, and my values also very clear.
Right, that's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. And with that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Do join us. Stick around. We'll be right back. And we're back. Earlier on, we were just talking a little bit more about, of course, Megha's background and her journey so far through her entrepreneurship, her family, and, of course, the love for people, right? And we were just talking off air earlier on that there are certain projects that you really do want to take on. Mm-hmm. And I was very surprised. I mean, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but you're actually looking to evolve and start sharing a bit more as a speaker and writing your own book.
Yes, that's right. That's one of my dreams for this year.
Right. And it's all going to be focused on the theme of financial independence and literacy for women.
So that is something, that theme is still a work in progress. So what I'm trying to do is as I was sharing earlier, find my voice and find my message and really fine tune it. And so right now, the journey I'm on is I'm trying to figure out like what are the things I'm very passionate about. One thing that I really like doing and I didn't share is I love journaling. And I have been recently facilitating a lot of journaling sessions as well. And I've also explored the idea of coming out with a journal which would have prompts. So you buy the journal and there are prompts which would help you write and reflect. I think, like I really believe for everyone, it's very important to have some sort of self-reflection time, right? I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of yoga as part of my spiritual practice or wellness practice. So I feel like everybody should have some form of wellness practice, and it could be running, which I know a lot of folks in Singapore do. It could be time in the gym. But you need something. And for your mind, an easy way to calm the mind down and become centered is through journaling.
That's very interesting. I think that's how I do it with podcasting, to be honest. And one of the ideas that I was actually going through in the past was that, okay, when I do reach 50 guests, what do I do with 50? I'm like, okay, yeah, but now I'm at the 50-something mark and we're going to hit there's probably 60-something, right? I'm also thinking to myself, okay, we've passed it already. Am I supposed to do that? But I realized that there's a giant repository of information that we have that we could eventually do something with. So what some people have actually been doing is that they do their own podcast and they take all the learnings and turn that into a book.
Yeah.
And that could be one, right? The other way is that I noticed earlier on you did mention that you're trying to find your voice and what you're passionate about, what your core message really is. I think as you continue to talk to more people, and not only that, not just have casual conversations, but to have truly deliberate, very intentional conversations with them, somehow or other, it naturally will come out without you even noticing it. And then from there, once we become aware of it, those common themes will come out. You see, I understand we're taking a very cerebral approach to things, right? Writing them down strategically. Oh, this is what I like. This is what, but the previous guest that we had was Joel, and in his practice, what he always does is the whole head, heart, and gut approach, which is, of course, logically, what do we want? What does my heart say about this? And what does my gut say about these things? Only until these three things are aligned will you be able to truly communicate those messages.
Right.
So I'm just like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense when we do something like that. I'm just wondering whether that could... Has that been something that you've been able to look into as well in your approach so far?
So, for me, as I was sharing, I do a lot of meditation and I do Kundalini Yoga. So that's where, I would say it's slightly more aligned to that head, heart, and gut approach, because that's where, when I'm centered and focused, the ideas pop, and it's like... I get this very strong feeling that this is what I need to be doing, and could be anything related to, like, could be my work, could be like next steps. Or sometimes when I'm confused whether, like, should I do this or should I not? Like, that's when I get the clarity.
That's nice.
So, but I feel like that is when that alignment is happening for me.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
At least you get it when you meditate. I get it in the middle of the night when I wake up at 2 and I have to write something down in case I'll forget it, or either that or I'm in the toilet somewhere. The best ideas are somehow always coming from there. I have no idea why. Right. So with that, I don't know how to transition to the next part, but like how we always end off the podcast, we always have a rapid fire session of 10 questions with our guests so that they can get to know you in these 10 simple questions. Okay. So Megha, are you ready?
Not really.
Not
but
really,
okay.
But we're still going to do this,
Yeah,
right? You
we'll
committed.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we do it. All right, here's Megha Singh with the epic questionnaire. Question number 1. One word that you like the most.
Intention.
Intention. One word you dislike very much.
Fear.
If you could have a conversation with anybody, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would that be?
Dalai Lama.
What do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
Nothing.
Do you even have a mirror?
I do.
All right, name one superpower that you'd like to have.
Teleportation. I hate commuting. I wish I could just say, now I will from here go home and just reach home without having to take a grab.
Yeah, taxi fare is expensive, especially on a rainy day, right? You braved the storm here. It must have cost like $30 just to get here.
It did.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Right? The teleportation would be nice. We'd save a lot of money if we could. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
And time.
Oh, yes. Favorite dish to eat?
Oh, I'm cake.
Cake.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm not really a foodie, but no, I love cake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take note of that. Favorite travel spot or the next travel spot you want to go to?
Bhutan.
Something in the arts that you've always wanted to do, but you have yet to do it.
Dancing.
And what does retirement look like to you?
I'm not planning to retire.
How do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy?
Ooh, so that's the work in progress.
Okay. With that, well, you've survived the questionnaire. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us today on the Epic Podcast. Really appreciate you coming down and sharing so much. Now, if anybody would like to connect with you, to learn from you, or in fact to work with you with your consultancy, how can they reach you?
So they can reach out to me on my Instagram, which is @MAMEGHA. And also my email is Megha@B-Inc.Asia. So that's where you can connect with me. And I just want to say thank you so much, Edric, for inviting me. This is my first ever podcast interview. And you made it so smooth and so nice. And thank you to your team here who have been amazing. So, overall, very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks to the guys over at MojoIdeas, right? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whoever you are listening out there, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. And this is the Epic Podcast with me, Edric, and we'll see you next week.